Azure is a very flexible platform and it gives us the ability to do a lot of things. Sometimes things we don't want our users to do, and sometimes things that we actually can't allow people to do because of compliance issues. So one of the ways we can deal with that is through the use of Azure policies. So Azure policies we can find by going to our services, show me all services and find policy there. Or right up here, I have this really cool search for resources, services, docs, whatever. So I'm going to search for policy and it comes up with services. I've got policy, firewall policies, router policies, service endpoint policies. I see things in the marketplace. I see things in documentation. I see things in Entra ID. So it searches a lot of different areas, and this becomes a very nice, very powerful search tool. What I want is actually the first thing it pulled up, policy, and this is where I set Azure policies. Now I have none of them defined. We have our scope here that we can view. Do we want for the entire subscription, or we can look for policies based on specific resource groups. Now we talked about resource groups in a previous video, but I deleted that resource group that we created in that video. But the point here is that you can see that we can do this by resource group as well. So those resource groups that allow us to organize things can be very useful for policy implementation as well. So we can look and see what policies we have, and we have none currently defined. So I have a bunch of predefined policies. So let's just walk through some of these things. We have getting started, which is going to give us some information about it. Here are things related to policy compliance. Do we have anything that's out of compliance with our policies? And then we can look for this by scope, by definition type, or by state. So I can choose to look at this for a particular resource group or a particular resource. I can look at this for specific types of definitions, either everything, initiative, or policy definitions, and then filter it down to whether I'm in compliance or not. Remediation. Now, this is a key thing. When we create a policy, by default, it takes effect for new resources. It does not take effect for old ones. So what happens is we can run a remediation task. Let's say we create a policy. After some resources are already created, we can run a remediation task that will then look for any old resources that are out of compliance. And that's where this remediation comes in. And then any events related to it. Okay, here's our authoring. And we have, under our authoring, we have three different things. So we have definitions. And there are a lot of policy definitions already created. We can also add our own policy definition, and we can add an initiative definition. An initiative is going to be kind of a group of policies. So again, we can filter here. So a lot of these are broken down. So definition types, do we want to look at everything, initiatives, or policies? Policy types, we want to look at all policies, custom policies, built-in or static policies. And then these are also categorized. And this becomes really helpful because it can allow us, I mean, you can see here the number of policies we'd have to wade through otherwise. So I'm going to go to my categories and I'm going to uncheck all, and I just want to find general policies. So when I search for general, it gives me all and then general. So I'm going to click general and apply, and that's going to filter things down to just general policies. Now here I'm going to have the policy name. I'm going to have the latest version, the definition, location, what type it is, built in, custom, static, what's the definition type, is it an initiative or a policy, and then the category. Now I want to look at this one. We're going to use this one as our example today, and that is our allowed locations. So I'm going to click on allowed locations, and this is going to show me what the policy looks like. And policies are written in JSON. So if you're going to write your own policy, which you can do, we showed the link for that just a few minutes ago, you'll structure it this way in JSON. But this allows you to review the policy a little bit and see exactly what it is. So this is a policy definition. It's not assigned anywhere, but we could see that here if it was. And these are the parameters that are required. And the parameter, we have a parameter called allowed locations. And so we're going to have to put in an array of allowed locations if we try to assign this policy. So let me go back to my definition, and you're going to see here is our parameter definition list of allowed locations. Now, I can duplicate this definition and do other things with it if I want, make it a custom one, and customize it to my heart's content. But I'm just going to take this and I'm going to assign this policy. So I'm going to click Assign Policy. And again, I can set the scope, right? So I can set it for my entire Azure for Students subscription or for specific resource groups. I can set exclusions. So I want this policy to apply except for. I can set resource selectors. So I can say this targets specific types of resources. My policy definition is already defined here. Allowed locations. It's because it's what I was on when I selected it. My version. I can set overrides. Here's my assignment name. So I can set this to be something more descriptive if I want, and then I can set a description. So I'm going to set this. Permit only US West. Description. This policy will allow us, or let's say this, will force us to use the US West, see if I can capitalize West, regions. And then I can set whether this is enforced or not. So I'm going to click Next. Only show parameters that need input. Yep, so here's my parameter that popped up, allowed locations. I'm going to say give me US West 2, US West 3. And let's do West US. Okay, there we go. So I can use those 3 regions. So I'm happy with that. So I have 3 locations allowed. I'm going to go next. So this will allow me to set up a remediation. By default, this assignment will only take effect on newly created resources. Resources can be updated via a remediation task after the policy is applied. So I can set a managed identity for that. I'm going to go ahead and skip that for the moment. I can set a non-compliance message. I'm sorry. You are only allowed to create resources. Hey, let me do 2 instead of 3 L's in allowed. In the West US regions. So that gives our little compliance message, and then we'll double check, make sure everything is what we want, and we're going to click Create. And that's going to create our policy. Now notice here, creating a policy, please note that assignment takes around 5 to 15 minutes to take effect. So if I was to go create a VM right now, I might not have that. So let me come back to my policy, and I'm going to click on my assignments, and now I'll see I have a couple of assignments from when I was playing around before, and then this one right here. So I've got a couple of assignments, and then I can also assign policies or initiatives from here. Here's where I can review my exemptions. And then I can also now remember if I want, this only applies to new things, right? So if I want to check things that already exist, then I need to create a remediation task. And let me come back to my overview. You see that might be in my assignments. Oops, that just opened up my policy. That one's, it's not refreshing my policies. It said it would take 5 to 15 minutes to pop up, and I think we're seeing that. Okay, there we go. Now I have the right policy. The other one should have been deleted. Okay, so I'm going to click on my policy, and here I can edit assignment, delete assignment, duplicate the assignment, view compliance for this particular policy, view the definition or the exemptions for this particular policy, and right here is where I can create a remediation task. Now, it's not giving me the option because I don't have any resources that would need to be remediated, but if I did, this is where I could say, all right, we need to assign a policy. We need to go back and make sure everything is in alignment with this policy. This is where we would set our create our remediation task. Okay, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and delete this policy. So I'm just going to delete, and I don't want to take out the policy definition. I want to delete the assignment because I want it to no longer take effect. The other thing I can do is I can come in and edit my assignment, and I can disable my assignment. Now, that keeps it there, but it doesn't enforce it. And you'll notice this notification right here. When enforcement is disabled, oops, it just went away. The policy isn't enforced, but we can still view compliance assessment. So it doesn't force it to take effect, but it still lets us see, are we aligning with this policy or not? We're just not enforcing it. So I want this to actually go away. So I'm going to come back to my assignments, permit only US West, and I am going to delete my assignment, and that will take it out. So now it's open for us to use any region in the world. Okay, so that is a real quick overview of how policy assignment works. You can do a lot with policy assignment to guarantee regulatory governmental compliance. You can do it to restrict certain types of resources. You can do all kinds of things with policy assignments. And as you saw from the definition, they can get pretty extreme. So you're going to have to be comfortable with Azure in order to be really, really effective in writing your own policies. However, just so you are aware, we have a ton of policies that we can use. So you might be able to find one predefined that's going to do exactly what you want it to do.